It is 1:03, and so we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our second of 4 webinars on engaging students online. We will put the links to the slide deck in the chat, and so we'll have that. We'll reference that at the end as well. So I'm going to introduce myself. For those of you who weren't here last week, my name is Jason Psycho. I'm an instructional technology consultant here at Wayne Risa, and my partner in crime today is Judy Bowling. She is an instructional technology library consultant at Wayne Risa as well. So say hi, Judy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
All righty, moving right along here. It's just some housekeeping issues, some standard fare, and as well as good video conferencing etiquette. It's just to kind of take some housekeeping issues at the beginning. And if you are new to Zoom or this is your first video conference with Zoom, we ask that you mute if you are not speaking. And the button there is off on the far lower left of the screen. Also, if you're experiencing delays or internet bandwidth issues, consider turning off your webcam. I don't know if you're like me, I've got a face for radio, so every chance I get it to turn off my webcam, I use the chat bar for questions. You can see the chat there. That's the quote bubble in the middle bottom of your screen. And then if you're having technical difficulties, feel free to drop off, leave the webinar and rejoin using the link. We'll let you back in. We're not locking the webinar after a certain point. So if something happens internet-wise, you just roll with it. Log off, log back on, we'll let you back in. So. Today, what we're going to talk about is collaboration, and we're going to begin by talking about collaboration as an overview and talk about what we mean when we're talking about collaboration, and then talk about engagement strategies, both synchronous and asynchronous. So again, to recap from last time, when we talked about synchronous, we're talking about live, in person, kind of what we're doing now. Asynchronous collaboration, where we're talking about when it's time delayed and people doing things on their own time and not in a live session like this. Before we move on, at the beginning, if you're joining us late, not a big deal, but if you were here early, we gave you an opportunity to experience Flipgrid. Flipgrid is one of the tools we talked about last week in our webinar about connecting with students. And this was just a quick to have people introduce themselves, give a little video introduction. And again, better than the, just voice or picture or text. It's a way to take a video of yourself and introduce yourself. And you can do this for a variety of activities. You can have students almost like TikTok, have them demonstrate how they solve a problem, how they would, a whole variety of different ways that you can use Flipgrid. So we'll post that link at the end. Feel free to introduce yourself even after the webinar has concluded. So today's goal is, we're going to try to bounce back and forth between talking about, what it means to do collaboration online and go through that process, but also, give you some concrete examples of things you can do and tools you can use in the classroom. And so, depending on your grade level, depending on the content area, depending on the types of students you have, depending on their access to resources and whatnot, not everything is going to be able to apply to your situation. However, sometimes that novelty can spark something different, like, oh, I can't do this, what he's showing today, but I can do something similar using whatever tool you have at your disposal. So just kind of have that guide you today. We rarely create something different until we see something different. So moving on, just a little bit of humor here. We've all been to school, we've all been to college, and we've all had to do a group project at some point. And if you've been in a group, you've been in good groups and you've been in bad groups. Based on those experiences, that generally group membership has these types of personalities. Just the first one who does all the work, that may or may not have been you. You have the clueless person, has no idea what's going on. You have the one that says it's going to help but never comes through. And then you have the person who does a lot of work at the beginning and then does a lot of work at the end. And in the middle, they're just missing in action. So what we want to talk about today is how to limit that problem. And again, like I said, we've all been in good groups, we've all been in bad groups. And part of the additional problems that we face in this new world we're living in is the fact that we can't necessarily monitor groups as well as we could seeing students face-to-face every day. So let's talk about a few definitions really quickly. Let's talk about cooperation and collaboration. You can see the definitions on the board there. I'm not going to elaborate or read them word for word. You can read them for yourself. But the idea is cooperation is a bit more about division of labor. And that's like when you have a project that you maybe assigned to your students and you have several parts to it, and there's 4 parts to it. There's 4 people in the group. One person takes part 1, one person takes part 2, one person takes part 3, etc. They slap it all together in a PowerPoint presentation at the end, and they're all responsible for their one part and nothing else. That's not necessarily collaboration as is cooperation. So when we're talking about collaboration, we're talking coordinated activity, we're talking about overlapping roles, we're talking about individual and group accountability, and really no group member is living in isolation. So have that kind of as your mindset as we move forward when we talk about collaborating online. And so what does that entail? Well, I'm going to play this short video, and it is going to describe 7 aspects of creative collaboration to really engage students in the collaborative process, if I didn't just hit the wrong button there.
We've all had times when group work failed. People missed deadlines, failed to communicate, and didn't learn from mistakes. But chances are you've also been part of a team when you accomplished something epic together that you could have never done on your own. So what makes this creative collaboration work effectively? Well, here are 7 ideas. Number 1, ownership. Members need to be empowered from the start. Here they can solve problems, generate ideas, and design systems that lead to success. Number 2, dependability. Creative collaboration requires members to hit their deadlines and develop creative endurance. Number 3, trust. When members trust one another, they work interdependently. Here they genuinely listen to one another and assume the best in each other. Over time, they become transparent and even vulnerable. Number 4, structure. The structure should be loose and flexible, but you need to have structure in creative collaboration. It needs to exist. This is why I love design thinking. It's a flexible framework for getting the most out of the entire creative process. Number 5, a shared vision. I'm not referring here to vision statements that you put on a wall or slap onto a website. I'm thinking more in terms of a sense of direction. It's a shared desire, a goal that you're aiming for, and a picture of what you will produce. Number 6, fun. The best collaborative groups I've been a part of are the ones where you want to be together. They laugh, they play together, and this can actually boost both convergent and divergent thinking. Number 7, candor. This is one of the big takeaways from Creativity Inc., a book by one of the co-founders of Pixar. It's the idea that groups need to be honest about what's working and what's failing. And this honesty allows you to adjust and iterate and ultimately create something awesome.
And so what we want to, kind of get you thinking about throughout today's webinar is how do we build these aspects into any type of collaborative project, as well as, the technical how-tos, and kind of show you some new tools that you can utilize in your online classroom. So I'm not going to go through all 20, but again, these are just some generic tips for collaboration, and regardless of the medium, whether you're in person or virtual. Just a couple, key ones here to think about is, obviously, like we talked about last week, establishing group norms. Sorry. And keep the groups manageable in terms of size. Allow for flexibility. And again, number 7, consider assessment. We'll talk about that in a few slides. Again, consider the makeup of the group, and we'll talk a little bit about role assignments and how we handle that. And then also just kind of consider using real world problems as opposed to your generic, write a paper or project or a presentation on a famous person in the past. So What we want to do next is start off with an activity that everyone can participate in. And we're going to use a tool called Jamboard. And Google Jamboard obviously is a Google product because I said so. And Jamboard allows for cultivating and discussing and sharing ideas, which is a key component of collaboration online. So we have the link that we are going to put in the chat bar. You can see it on the screen there in red. And one of the things that Jamboard is it's basically like a big board to share ideas. And so you can do drawings, you can do, you can upload images, you can actually add sticky notes. And so when you click on that link, it's going to open up this. And what you can see is a bunch of people joining right now. What I want to highlight is if you want to add a comment, use the sticky note tab right here. So if I click on this and I type my sticky note, I can say, you know, this is what we're supposed to be writing about. And if I go back here really quick, this is your topic. You know, just quickly, we're going to take a couple minutes and you're going to add your notes to the Jamboard and talk about how do you normally collaborate or cultivate student collaboration and engagement in a traditional classroom. So I'm going to put that in here and you can see it pop up on the top there. So lab work. Okay, we start seeing people posting. Move these around, giving students choice. Turn and talk, allowing for student choice in groups. And if you're not participating in this, that's fine. What we'd like you to do is think about how could I use this in an online setting? So what given your subject area or grade level, what could you do using this tool to increase engagement and collaboration with students? And as a teacher, you can see, or one of the co-creators of this Jamboard, I'm moving these around as I see fit. I believe you guys can move them around as well. Judy, correct me if I'm wrong there. Okay, probably about another minute. But you can start to see how, like maybe some other tools you have used, maybe Padlet or a few others, you have some flexibility in how you change the color. You can see some different colors there. You can move them around. You see some people kind of angling them interestingly. I can make it bigger or smaller. And again, in a synchronous session where you're working with students, or in an asynchronous session where you just leave it open for students to add things, you can go ahead and ask questions or just get feedback and come back to this later on. I'm seeing a few notes in the chats. It says it looks like it maxes out at 20. That might be an issue. So that really is just, I believe, on the version of Jamboard or the version of G Suite district has. So that might be something to consider or a question you can ask your IT folks. So looking at this, and again, the link will be available. So again, looking at that type of thing, we'll leave that open for a little while if you want to play around with that. But Jamboard is one way that you can have kind of an open dialogue. It can be semi-structured, or it can be a free-for-all, which kind of brings us to our next topic. When you're talking about engagement in general, one of the things that we have to think about is providing structure. If we're valuing group collaboration and we think that it's important, then we need to be able to, like any content area or any content you're teaching or skill you're teaching, you need to scaffold, you need to provide some structure, and you need to provide feedback. So kind of a non-example of good collaboration or good collaboration procedure would be a free-for-all without structure unless you've built that rapport with your students. So for example, we're all new here, we just met. What if I just threw you all in a breakout room and gave you this question: why do we do group work? Well, you guys would be separated into different groups. We're going to do this shortly, but a little different. And you'd probably be a little confused as, okay, who's doing what? Are we supposed to talk? Are we supposed to write anything down? Are we reporting out? And notice here, just doing that would be kind of a train wreck, let's face it here. And with adults, it'd be a train wreck. With students, it'd be a mega train wreck. So what we'd like to do instead is, if you're going to use something like breakout rooms or any other type of small group discussion, you need to be able to provide structure. And so what we're going to do is demonstrate this in another way, still using breakout rooms, but we're going to provide a bit more structure. So we are going to put you in breakout rooms, and in a couple minutes when I say go, Judy's going to ship you off, and you're going to be randomly aligned with a couple other people in this webinar today. And you're going to discuss these types of questions, and we'll kind of come back and hit on a few, because we'll be collecting your thoughts on this. So the questions we're going to ask are: how can online collaboration enhance learning? What do students learn when they engage in collaborative projects? How do you ensure effective collaboration? And how do you engage students in collaborative learning? So what we're going to do is, as you can see in the chat bar, Judy put a link to a collaborative Google Doc. And so I'm going to hop over here really quickly. And we do know that this would have an unlimited number of participants. So you're going to be assigned a breakout room. It'll tell you breakout room number, whatever. That's going to be the area where you collect notes. So if you're in breakout room 1, you're going to type your group members' names here, and you're going to talk about these questions amongst yourselves, and you're going to take notes on your responses to these questions. If you're in group number 2, you just scroll down to page 2, group 3, page 3, and so on and so forth. So it will tell you what breakout room you're going to, and you can go ahead and start introducing yourselves and talking about these questions. And we're going to give you about 5 minutes to work on this. So a good way to kind of proceed would be, as soon as you're in your break, just kind of say hi to everyone else in the room, and take a few minutes, find your page on that Google Doc, and take attendance, if you will, and just discuss those for a few minutes. When the 5 minutes are up, we will pull you back into the main room, and then we'll talk about your responses briefly and keep that document open for everyone to kind of share. So Judy, is there anything else I need to do here? Or are we ready to go?
We are ready to go. And as soon as you guys go into your breakout rooms, you should see, it might be for a brief moment, it'll tell you what breakout room you are going into. So that will align with the group that Jason just mentioned. And then we're going to give 5 minutes. So in the upper right-hand corner, once you're in that breakout room, you should see a little timer. It's small, but it will be there. So we will take you into those rooms right now. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think everyone should be back to the main room now.
I'm hearing some background noise, but okay, so just really quickly, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that and see what we've got. So again, just in a short amount of time, just for the sake of time, we want to make sure that we're going through and presenting a lot of things here. But just looking at some of the things that we're trying to show you here is that, notice there's a bit more structure there, even though it's time constrained. We're having an active documentation of notes and progress and work. And that's kind of a key aspect of collaboration, is making sure that you have documentation, and you have an ability to see and curate what people are doing, and also sharing. There was nothing wrong with people scrolling up and down and seeing what other people were putting. Again, you can go ahead and continue that, and if you want, but we're going to move on a little bit here. So again, what do we learn, or what do we think they learn? Here's just a list of a couple things that we're considering along with the video. These are the reasons why we engage in collaboration. So we want critical thinking, we want inquiry, we want empathy, we want communication, and we want that iterative thinking when things don't go right. The primary point we're trying to get at here is that you want to be intentional. I asked, why do we do group work? Well, a funny, not funny answer would be, so I have fewer projects to grade. And I say that in jest, keep in mind that sometimes resources are scarce and we need to put people in groups. But we're trying to kind of create learning activities that are complex. We want to prepare students for being on a team. And again, we'll hit on that. You're going to function in teams your entire life, and talk a little bit about that. But if you're being intentional and you set up the group dynamics correctly, you should minimize opportunities for free riding, that guy who kind of hangs on to the end and participates little but still gets the A. And then just focus on strength and stretching people's expertise. So couple other tips really quickly on whatever LMS you're using, and we can't go through all of them, but if you are using an LMS this year for your online learning, again, it helps to have a classroom hub. It helps to centralize location to streamline your workflow. You should have mechanisms built in for creating groups and communicating individually or in groups, setting up discussions, which we'll talk about. We talked last week about sharing or creating avenues for having video meetings if your district is allowing that. And one of the main things and one of the nice things about the Google products, as we've seen, is that you can share collaborative documents. Just really quickly here on creating groups, depending on what LMS you're using, you should look at how you can create smaller groups within your classroom. For Microsoft Teams, for example, you can add a channel, set it to private, and put members in there. For Google Classroom, when you create an assignment, you just don't assign it to everybody. You assign it to certain students. And then in Moodle, you can create a group, and that group is consistent throughout the course, and you assign things to that particular group. One of the other things you're going to want to consider is just having assigned duties. If you put people in a group of 4 or 5 and say, do this, that creates some tension because people don't know what they're supposed to do or who's supposed to do what. One of the things you want to make sure that you do is set up some generic and specific duties. Now you can pick the people who do each of those duties, but they could choose themselves. The idea here is to have a set duty for each person within the group so they know what they're supposed to do. There's an individual accountability, gives everyone a voice, and you don't have that somebody taking control of the entire group and trying to do everything by him or herself. So consider assigned duties as well and outline those in the project. The last thing is that we want to make sure that we are assessing progress. Just like any other skill that we teach in our content area or our grade levels, we want to, A, teach the skill, model the skill, give opportunities for practice, and provide feedback, both formatively and summatively, on their group performance. So a couple tools for doing that can be used in an online environment. Google Apps. You can look at the revision history of a Google app. So you can see who's done what, and you can see who has done a lot of work, who has done a little work, when they've done it, and are they doing it all at the last minute? Are they consistently interacting? Those types of things are helpful. Comments and chats in a Google Doc or slides or spreadsheet or whatever. Have them keep track of that and don't resolve them and make them disappear. That allows you to see the conversations about certain things in the project, and you can see who's commenting, who's not, and how well they interact with one another. On a more basic level, maybe with younger students, have them color code their work. So they're just typing whatever they add to a document or whatever they add to the discussion, have them use a different color text. And that way you can see whether or not, just based on the amount, who's been doing more or less work and who's been interacting and who has not been interacting. And that ties into some of the other things we need to consider with tracking students remotely this coming year. And the last piece is to basically at the end have a self and peer assessment form. One of the things that you could do is just ask the group members, confidential, is what % of the workload do you think you did versus your colleagues or your group members? And realizing that even though we try to think group work is equal, it's never equal. So don't stress that everybody's got to, if you're in a group of 3, everyone has done 33% of the work. That's never going to happen, so don't force it. And I usually encourage setting up in a way that they can't do that. They have to make some decisions. What you're really looking for there are anomalies. Are 2 group members giving themselves higher % ratings and one person is consistently lower? And then that might be an opportunity to provide feedback to that person. Or if you see opposites, somebody gave themselves a high workload distribution and someone gave themselves a low and that other person has it flipped. That tells you that group dynamics are in question. And that again gives you opportunities for feedback. Like I said, if you think collaboration is important and it's a skill, we need to be able to address it, assess it, and provide some formative and summative feedback on it. And those are some mechanisms that you can track it in an online environment. So with that said, I think I'm going to switch gears here now, and we're going to stop sharing. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Judy. She's going to pick it up from here. Judy, you might want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So we're going to shift gears and go through some different ways that you might be able to engage your kids online with some collaboration, but we're going to start out with the power of talk. And those who know me know that I love to talk, but we also need to give our kids lots of opportunities to talk. So most of you are probably familiar with the phrase of tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. And so we need to kind of keep that in the forefront of our mind too, that as we may be moving into this online world, that we need to keep at the forefront that we know that our kids need opportunities to talk, because that's where that learning takes place, and learning is social. And so just as a reminder that just because we're moving into this remote learning world, in some cases 100%, in some cases more of a hybrid model, it doesn't mean working alone. And we have to give our kids opportunities to work with other kids, have conversations with other kids, because that's where they're going to do a great deal of their learning. And so as we think about talking, whether it be a face-to-face conversation in person or online, we need to give our kids lots of opportunities to engage in meaningful conversations. We want them talking and discussing with their whole class, as well as with classmates in small groups like you just did in those breakout rooms. They need opportunities to share their experiences and ideas when there's relatively low risk or no risk, where there's not really one exact answer. We want to give everyone a chance to talk and to honor everyone's voice. Giving our students opportunities to experience success and feel emotionally connected so that we can establish that safety and trust within those collaborative groups. Some low stakes topics might include something personal, like what is your favorite book? What is something that you enjoy doing? It could be some questions around, would you rather questions, current events. And then as students learn how to cross their own thoughts and beliefs with each other's ideas, it helps to build that strong culture of respectful dialogue, and it encourages that discourse that we want our students to have. So as you begin planning opportunities for your kids to engage in conversation, you also want to be mindful of your students that might not have internet access. So not to forget about the tried and true phone and other ways that you might be able to include their voice in those conversations and discussions. And then again, also building in structures so that all voices are heard and honored. So as a supplement to live conversations, there's, as Jason mentioned, there's lots of technology tools out there that can be used to increase engagement with just an online discussion. And so whether it be a learning management tool or a couple of tools that I'm going to share with you in just a moment. But in these online discussions, one of the benefits of them is also giving kids an authentic opportunity to engage in good digital citizenship. As I'm sure that we've all seen, especially these last 6 months, there's a lot of conversations out there that might not be done in a respectful way, might not be done in a way that's productive. And so we want to, as we help our kids build those positive digital footprints, also give them authentic opportunities to engage in those conversations, to be thoughtful, open-minded citizens. And then lastly, when we think about these online discussions, it also gives us an opportunity for kids to engage in conversations asynchronously outside of the classroom. And it also creates an opportunity for especially our shy kids or introverted kids who might not feel as comfortable talking in that face-to-face environment. And so some of the strategies that might be helpful with that is to provide some talking stems for kids to help them, with those conversations on when they do agree or disagree, or backing up evidence that they have. So however you share those stems with them, some, depending on the age level, might need some guidance in engaging in some respectful conversation with their classmates. A lot of purposes for why you might want to engage in an online conversation. And again, depending on the tool that you're using, it might look and feel a little bit different, but the essence of them is the same. So again, scaffolding it early, provide them with some opportunities that have some low risk to it, just to build that culture, especially if you're starting 100% online this year. It speaks to some of the community building that we referred to last week. And these kids have to get to know each other. And so you want to build in some positive experiences from the get-go. So a couple different tools that we're going to kind of get into. And again, like Jason mentioned earlier, this isn't about, it's not tool driven. It's always led with the learning and your pedagogy. But depending on what your purpose is, you may want to take a dive into some different tools. So I put Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams there at the bottom, just as an example of two tools, learning management systems that have some functionality in there to engage in some discussion. If you're a Microsoft organization, you also have access to Yammer. And if you're not familiar with Yammer, Yammer is like Facebook in a safe environment. So it's more of a social media environment, but again, you're giving kids that authentic opportunity to have conversations, have discussions, but under the umbrella of the district safety net. Kialo is a tool that if you are having kids engaging in conversation around debate, maybe persuasive conversations, this tool is designed for that back and forth conversation. It also allows kids to upvote if they really support a comment that somebody had made. They can link to research articles, anything to support and provide evidence for the argument that they're making. Parlay is the one that I want to take a peek at right now. So you are welcome to just watch the screen, or Jason will put the link in there if you want to get in there and take a look at it yourself. But Parlay is a tool that is 100% designed to engage kids in conversation. So again, it comes down to what your purpose is, but there are some features within Parlay that might be of value to you, and depending what it is that you want to do. I should mention too that this is one of those softwares that is a freemium. So you get 15 free roundtables. And then if you want more, you would have to purchase those. But you can always, when you're done using Roundtable, delete it and add additional ones. But some things that are nice about this is that if I were to create a brand new one, I can choose to have live conversation or online. And if I choose the online, they have what they call a Parlay universe, which is really nice because it basically just has this database and this collection of discussion conversations that are already started. So if you're someone who's like, I'm not really sure where to begin, I need some help, I just need something to trigger some ideas, they've got a large collection. So the one that you're looking at right now, Deepfakes and Democracy, is one that I pulled out of that database. So I would pose that question to my students. And again, this was taken from that database. It has information for kids to read. You can add video, you can add images, and then you've got your discussion questions. And so kids can then engage in a conversation. And so some nice things you'll notice, it says Anne Frank, Claude Bernard, Albert Einstein. So there's a feature in here that you can have kids, when they log in with either their Microsoft account or Google, that by default, it gives everybody a secret identity, which can be really powerful for kids who might feel unsure of themselves. They might feel more brave if it's not connected to their own identity. But you can choose to have their names revealed as well too. So that's a really nice feature. And if kids wanted to comment on it, they can do so, and they can leave a comment on each other and then send it. Some other nice features with this tool that if you're thinking, well, why might I use this tool versus one of the learning management built-in softwares that we already have? This one has some assessment features built into it. If that's something that you're interested in, you can either choose some of the built-in criteria, or you can add your own criteria. You can set the criteria scale if you would like. And then the peer feedback, you can identify what kind of questions, if you want to help kids deepen their conversation a little bit more. With the assessment, I should also mention that there's a feature in here where you can, like in a Google form where you want to see the responses and you see grids and pie charts and things of that nature, you can see exactly how much kids have participated, how frequently they've participated. You can click on individual students and get that information as well. So this might be a tool that you might be interested in checking out, because again, it is 100% designed to engage in discussion and conversation with students. Backchannel is another way that you might want to engage kids in conversation as they're collaborating with one another. Some of you might be familiar with Today's Meet, which people fell in love with and used, and then it went away. So it is a good reminder that we always lead with our pedagogy and find the tool that fits our need at that time, but not to get married to any tool, because those tools either go away in time or as an example, Moat, which was a tool we mentioned last week around recording audio into comments. Last Monday, it was 100% free. Sometime this week, Wednesday or Thursday, they went to a freemium version. So things are always changing, but YoTeach is the Backchannel replacement, if you will, for Today's Meet. But some of you, just even as adult learners, might have used a Backchannel. It's just a nice way to have a digital conversation around or alongside another event. So if you go to a conference, for example, you might have, listening to a keynote speaker, and there might be a whole Backchannel going on with another conversation of people connecting, talking, sharing ideas and information. And so YoTeach, you can, as a teacher, create an account. Kids don't need an account. You would simply create a room yourself, get a PIN number, and then you can see their students could add a PIN number. But with Padlet, I want to share that one. This is a tool that many of you are probably familiar with and have probably used as a digital bulletin board. But how many of you knew that it also has a Backchannel feature for collaboration? And so right now I have this board set up as a traditional bulletin board, which again, many of you are familiar with. But if you go up to the 3 dots, you can change your format. And if you're anything like me, I find myself getting into a rut, and by default, I always choose the wall. And I never paid attention to all of the other ones there. But if you look down towards the bottom there is one called Backchannel. So it takes my board that I just had, so I can toggle between these formats any way I want. But what you should see at the bottom of it now is a chance for me to type in a post, and it will thread it on my board back and forth. And so just like any other thing that you might post on a Padlet board, you can include a link, you can include a document, you can include an image, but it threads it more like a discussion board. But if you get into it and you're like, that's not really what I did want, you can always go back to that change format choice, and you can change it back to your wall and go between the two. So just wanted to point that out because, again, I know that a lot of people have used Padlet and perhaps didn't know that there was a Backchannel there as well. So another tool that you can use to engage kids in some collaborative conversation. The other thing that I want you to think about is that there are a lot of things that all of you do in your face-to-face classroom. You have a lot of protocols in place that you do. And in that face-to-face world, a lot of it involves perhaps kids sitting at a table. It could be kids turning and talking. And so just think about, if that's a strategy that has worked well for you in the past, how might you be able to adapt that in the online world? So for example, some people call it think, pair, share, think, ink, share. But if that's a protocol that you've used before and you have access to breakout rooms, how might you be able to pose a question or a prompt to kids like we did a moment ago, establish this at a time, and then this might seem counterintuitive, but placing kids initially in individual breakout rooms, giving them that time and space to think without having the worry of what others might be looking at you writing or being distracted with other people writing. So just temporarily placing everybody in their own space to think through that prompt, write out their response, and then bringing them back to the whole group. And at that point, you can choose to share it out with the whole group or break them up into smaller groups of 3, 4, or 5. If you're in a situation where you're using software that does not have any breakout rooms, so again, just trying to think differently, it might be a situation where, okay, we're going to just stay together as a whole class, perhaps play some calming music, set a timer on your screen, and then again, giving kids that space to think and ink. If you have something like Google Meet, you could create a single collaborative document where perhaps you have group 1, a link to their room, group 2, a link to their room. So different ways that you can do it, but again, thinking about strategies that you already are using in person and how might you adapt them into this online world. So another one would be Jigsaw. A lot of people use this as a strategy to take complex text and break that down. And so you separate kids into these small expert groups, and then they become the expert on that material. You come back and they teach that to their peers. So again, if that's a strategy that you have found effective, you use with your kids, just thinking about how can we continue to have that collaboration with the tools that you have access to. Brainstorming is certainly a big part of collaboration. So again, just trying to show you some different ways that you might be able to engage your students in collaborating digitally. So we are familiar with Google Slides as one example. So just something to maybe a different way of using it. So we've had experience of using the collaborative editing feature of Google Docs. And so this is just one example where, if we have kids assigned as a group, and perhaps this was the question that we were tackling. So group 1 could be assigned to slide 1, and I have it so that the blue images are a part of the background, so they're not going to move around for the kids, and they can then just go in there and enter. So if we're one group, the advantage of doing something like this is that oftentimes when a question is asked, kids don't know what to say, or you hit that brick wall, and it's like you're giving them permission to say, okay, student 1, if you don't know where to start, but your 3 group mates do, you can look over and see what they're writing. You can scroll through the slides and see what they're writing. And this is really helpful too for your English learners, so that they're seeing some of that sentence structure and getting ideas as well. So again, it's okay to see what other people are writing. You might want to also remember that using the gutters of the slide deck is a space for you to put some directions. So in this case, another way is rather than just saying, okay, group 1, you answer this question, group 2, you answer this question, perhaps assigning different roles. So group 1, you're going to respond to this question, but you are going to respond to it from the perspective of a scientist. Group 2, you're going to respond to that question from the perspective of a politician. Group 3, from the perspective of, an ordinary citizen. So again, just some different ways that you might be able to create or design something using what you have to get kids to engage in some conversation. The other one that I'd like to show, and I think Jason's going to put the link for this one in the chat. There's a lot of tools out there, again, that you can do for concept mapping. MindMeister is one of them, and again, it's one of those that has a freemium and a premium version, but the freemium version does give you 3 boards that you can use. One of the nice things I like about MindMeister is that I can create a board that I want to share with students, and I can share it with them, and I can just give them this link to share. So the link that Jason is sharing with you is I got right there. And so kids or whoever has that link can add to this board without having to create an account. And so it's as easy as either just double clicking somewhere and putting down an idea. If I hit return twice, it can do another idea. If I tab twice, it puts a sub-concept off of that one. So it's very user-friendly, very intuitive. But one of the things that, like I said, I like about it is that the person receiving the link doesn't have to have an account in order to collaborate. With that being said, I should mention that for the free version, the only choice you have for exporting it would be in an outline format. But again, that might be what you're looking for. So again, other tools out there, MindMeister is one of them, but it is a collaborative tool where kids could work together and collaborate on their ideas as they're thinking through a problem or situation that they're working on. So another idea where you can get kids collaborating and also engaging in conversation. So in the face-to-face world, many of you have probably engaged your students in an opportunity to have some type of a gallery walk. So whatever it was that they've created, they have stations around the room, kids walk around, they look at those artifacts, they have conversation around those, and then perhaps come back together as a whole group conversation. So again, if that's something that has worked for you, thinking differently about what might that look like in the online world. And so as an example, this was something that we did with our maker cohort last year. And so they shared artifacts of what they had made and created. So initially, this document was set to be in editing mode, so everybody could contribute their items. So one thing just to think about is that once maybe you've had something in edit mode where everybody collaborates and adds their content, going back into that document, shifting gears, and shifting it so that it's in comment only mode. And so in this case here, you can see that up in the upper left-hand corner, it's in comment mode only. So as a student, I could come to one of the slides and I could come in here and insert a comment. I can't do anything else. I can't edit anything. I cannot delete anything.
You're already.
But I can delete. I'm not delete. I can comment. And so again, giving kids sort of an authentic experience of engaging in conversation, having that respectful conversation, pulling in those digital citizenship conversations in a meaningful way for kids. So again, just wanted to remind you that even though many cases we tend to be putting our Google Docs into edit mode or view only mode, that you can also put them in comment only mode so that you can engage in conversations with that. And then the other thing I did want to mention, I know a moment ago I mentioned that Mote, that digital audio extension that you can record audio. In the resources that we are sharing with you, another extension is Talk and Comment, which will do the same type of a thing where you can add some audio comments as well. So I'm going to pass this one off to Jason if you want to speak to this one.
Yeah, so another example of this is, for this gallery walk is modeling phenomena. For those of you who are teaching science and have gone through NGSS training of any type, you know that modeling phenomena is important. And how do we do this in an online environment? Well, one of the things that's actually beneficial is the fact that we can template some things and actually have students create shapes and bubbles and whatever and copy paste them, so it's a little bit easier to do. And again, if you've done any of these where you're doing, let's say, gas laws and you're trying to draw a bunch of circles to show gas particles and draw arrows, it's a lot easier, and you can even color code in a situation like this to show that either the particles are moving at faster or slower speeds, they're hotter or colder, and in a 3-slide example, you could just copy and paste those for each group. They would have a before, during, and after slide of the same as the phenomena progresses. And so that would be one of the things that you could do over and over again. Now, as they do the gallery walk, as Judy mentioned, you could use an audio comment. You could create comments. You could insert an audio comment, and even have students involve themselves by creating an audio description, record themselves talking through what's happening on each slide, and insert an audio file into the slide, which is something that's possible in Google Slides. You just go to insert audio, and then you could drag in a file so they could record it separately. Or you could use a Talk and Connect as Judy mentioned, or Mote, although as we mentioned, Mote's kind of ruined our presentation today by starting to charge in the last week. So again, just a content example of how you could do a gallery walk in a specific content area.
Okay, we just wanted to mention again that all of these resources that we have shared with you guys, plus more, we have included on the slide or the Google site that is linked down there below. So the audio recording from last week is already posted on Connect and Communicate. Give us a day to get the video recording all set for today, and that will be posted on the Collaborate page as well. And with that, Jason and I would love to just thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. We hope that it was helpful. And if you would be so kind as to take that survey and provide us with some feedback, we would appreciate that. If you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself via the Flipgrid that was there when we first started, that will continue to be open. So we would love to see your smiles and your faces. And with that, we will wrap it up, but Jason and I will be happy to stay on board if there are any questions that we can be of help with.